A doorway marks a transition. It separates where we are from where we hope to go. And in this episode of the Detour Degree, the doorway becomes a metaphor for the future of work, where AI is changing how people enter careers, develop expertise, and build economic security. Today, guest Ayo Jones discusses whether AI is coming for jobs or changing what work means, and why workers need more than reassurance to prepare for what comes next. Hello, this is Naka, and welcome to the Detour Degree. And today I am excited to have a wonderful guest for our next great debate, Ayo Jones. Welcome, Ayo.
Hello. So happy to be here. Yay!
Yes, and I'm excited about this debate because to hear you say it, AI is going to be taking our jobs.
Yeah, that's going to happen. That is a thing.
Oh boy. Well, we're going to really get into it. But before we get started with this debate, could you tell my wonderful audience who is Ayo?
Yes, my name is Ayo Jones, and I'm coming to you all the way from Ghana, West Africa. My family moved here around 6 years ago, and we have been documenting our move on YouTube and have actually been on a reality docuseries that's playing right now on HBO Max. But beside that, I have spent over 20 years in education, not only as a classroom teacher, but as an instructional coach and as education leadership. And so now I support teachers and their outcomes so that we can make sure our kids are getting exactly what they need to be successful.
That's awesome. Being an educator, I'm sure, has given you a particular lens on the future of work and the future of our kids. And so let's dive right into it. What I try to do with the great debates is add nuance to the AI in education conversation. I have some questions about your position, but let's dive right into it. You say that AI is taking our jobs.
I don't think that we do ourselves any justice when we have conversations that either don't acknowledge the reality or don't give it the appropriate lens to look through it. And so when we talk about AI is going to take our jobs, it's really a step forward from this idea that resonated a lot a few years ago. When we heard about AI coming out, everyone was like, don't worry, AI is not coming for your job, but the person who knows AI is coming for your job. It felt very soothing. It was like, oh, okay, if I'm proactive, I can protect myself. What we're really seeing now is that there is a very specific erosion that's happening in the workplace that is moving away from that idea and moving towards the idea that AI is actually coming for jobs and it is displacing people already. And so it's not meant to be panic. I'm not trying to panic people in this moment, but I think we have to be really realistic about what's going on so that we can move ourselves forward, so that we can ensure that we're actually going to be learning the skills that we need to be viable and taking that forward into classrooms and making sure our students are learning things that are going to keep them competitive in this new global marketplace.
But what about this notion out there that AI is just another fad? It's just another boom waiting to happen. We've seen this pattern before.
We have seen this type of patterning before, but this one is a lot different than it used to be. When you think about how technology has evolved and how much runway we have for adoption, it looks very different as we've moved through the last few digital waves. Just to give an example, I remember one of the happiest days that I would ever have when I was in school was when they got the black AV cart with the VHS on it, and they would roll that cart down the hallway, and I would hear those wheels coming, just like, please turn into my room. Please turn into my room. We are talking about technology, TV, and VCRs in the classroom that is literally 30 years old. And we still have teachers now in classrooms who are struggling with how do we use video? How do we use this material in the classroom? And we've had a long runway. Google is 30 years old, and we still have teachers who are not quite sure on how to get to their Google Drive. So when we talk about the runway for this type of adoption, we saw 100 million users on ChatGPT inside of 3 months when it first came out. 100 million users. And right now we're seeing that usage is through the roof in a utility that's only been around for a few years. We don't have a lot of runway to adapt here. And that's why this is so different. We really are having to adapt at a speed that we just aren't prepared for. And we're not even sure where it's going.
But when you say AI is taking all the jobs, are there some jobs that are kind of protected? I think about, for example, going to my doctor. I don't know if I want AI kind of diagnosing what may be going on with me physically, mentally. That seems like healthcare would be a protected field. You'll look at more jobs like plumbing, HVAC, those type of skilled labor jobs.
Hmm.
From what I hear from you is that there is no safe space and that we need to prepare.
Well, I'm not going to say there's no safe space. And I don't want to make the contingency that AI is coming for all the jobs because that seems very far to one side. But let's really be clear about a couple of things that are already going on. When we talk about the medical field and talk about how burnt out our teams are, how short we are in qualified doctors in some areas, qualified nurses, there's a part of us that we do need AI to come in and start closing those gaps so that we can make sure that the service that we're getting, the diagnoses that we're getting, the treatment that we're getting are of high quality for everyone. That sounds like something all of us would subscribe to. And here's kind of the other nuancy thing, right? When you think about the process of going to the doctor, I would say like 90% of society is like, ugh, I'm gonna put that off as long as I can. And why is that? Why are we so begrudging about it? Can we use these tools to close the gap? And I think there's an opportunity there. But in doing so, we have to acknowledge that some jobs may be displaced because we are now using it in this new way. We're seeing radiology using AI scanners to look at and perform the review at as good a pace as a doctor, if not better in some circumstance. So we have to be fair to say, like, yeah, you want good quality treatment when you go to the doctor. And that might include some AI, but you're willing to make that trade-off, right?
Am I willing to make a trade-off that I would get
Yes,
better service if the doctor is working in conjunction with AI than without it?
correct.
I mean, that would take a lot of trust for me
It does take
because,
a lot of trust.
yeah, I look at AI and I know that there are different levels of AI, but, just in thinking about generative AI, we hear about the level of mistakes that AI makes. For example, you mentioned radiology, where an AI might detect something that isn't there in actuality, and now I'm getting
Mhm.
treatment that I don't need that could potentially cause more damage. Those are the kind of things that I think about.
But there's no way to guarantee that a doctor's not making that same mistake. When we're looking at the progression that generative AI has made over the last 3 or 4 years, we're really talking about pictures that came back with six fingers on one hand and looking like something had been drawn by a child. And now we're seeing that we almost can't detect the difference. We're seeing the progression happen that quickly. When you talk about how you yourself manage your own healthcare and the rise of wearable technology that a lot of people are going for in this moment, can you imagine if all of that stuff that you do on a daily basis, where you note that I'm not feeling quite right, or I did this or I did that, if your personal AI healthcare advocate was able to pre-meet with your doctor's AI assistant and have a conversation about you before you even walked in the room to get through that kind of stumbly part where you sit down and you're like, okay, so here's what's wrong with me. You could actually be getting better care cheaper and in a timeline that actually meets your needs. So there's opportunity there. But I want to backtrack a little bit too, because that medical field is just one part of this. I
Okay.
saw a meme on socials not that long ago that showed a teacher, because here we are at the end of the school year, a teacher looking like they had just had their last day up in the classroom. And on top of it,
We
it
all
said,
know that look.
AI, take my job. And I was like, yes, that is the feeling that we all have right now, right? We all know that feeling. And I think there are some jobs that will have some insulation. But the trajectory here is looking like in every opportunity where we can shore up training shortcomings, improve productivity, and create cycles where production is happening full time, 24/7, 7 days a week, no days off, no sick time. Those are areas that are very maybe vulnerable to AI and robotics.
I am reminded of a video that I saw recently where it was in an orchard and there was a drone and it was picking apples. These drones were analyzing the apples when they were ripe, when they, would kind of pick. And then afterwards, as they're going through this machine, there was one part that the person who ran the drones was like, well, the human has to do this part. And it's this last little part, something with the top of the apple that they have to take off. What I was reminded of and what I'm thinking about is, are we creating a situation where there may be new positions that are created? Because the other part of what he said is like someone has to maintain the drone, someone has to make sure they're powered. In addition to this human element, there's a new position being created of the person who's maintaining this hardware and software. Is that part of your thinking when you say AI is really going to impact our future workforce?
I wish it was. I really do wish it was. And a lot of this just has to do with the runway. It's very difficult to reskill an apple picker into a drone operator or even a coal miner into a mechanical engineer. Like those are not reskilling steps that happen quickly. But when we're talking about this speed of change, it's faster than how quickly we're able to reskill. But in addition to that, like the idea that new jobs will come is valid. A new type or style of job will come. But those jobs don't typically end up being as plentiful as the jobs they displace. We've seen this kind of play out over and over again over several industrial revolutions over years and years. We can take this all the way back to the Model T and coming off the line and really look at what happened to the people who were displaced. Saying that somebody who's working on a manufacturing line, oh, don't worry, some new jobs are going to be created. Don't help me pay my rent next month. And so that argument, like, don't worry, new jobs are coming. Huh? How am I going to fit into that new job? And is it going to come fast enough for me to pay my bills?
And so, what happens to the person who was picking apples? What do you see for them if they're not able to upskill? What are the
Yep.
implications behind
The,
what they're going to do?
That's why it's not okay for us to sit back and say, oh, don't worry, new jobs are going to be created. And don't worry, AI is not coming for your job. It's just coming for the jobs of people who don't know how to use it. It really doesn't help us to get ready. It doesn't allow us at least the awareness to say, I do need to consider how I fit into the new job structure and what I need to do now to make sure that I'm ready for what is coming. The more we kind of live in this fairy tale that AI is not coming for anybody's job, the harder it gets. I can't help but think about the initiatives that we set forth all throughout the states to build coders. You know, we are going to give you the skill that's going to ensure that you are always employed and employed well. Learn how to code. And now we're seeing Claude is coding pages faster than humans can even read them. It's coding pages at such a speed that the people who are supervising can't actually see the code that's going by. We're just doing spot checks. So what's happening to all of those people? All of those people are being displaced. And when they're displaced, they're not typically displaced into level jobs. They're not moving to another similar job that allows them to have that specific pay scale that they were used to. They now don't have a skill set that transfers. And so they're taking jobs that are below what they thought they were going to be able to get. When we have these conversations, we can talk, especially in education, are we getting our students well-rounded so that they can handle things? Are we focusing on the thinking skills that are necessary for them to use any tool and any update that's coming down the line? Are we moving away from teaching to the test, which has never made not a lick of sense, but are we moving away from that now knowing that that skill, that strength, that attribute has no merit in the new AI workforce of tomorrow?
And so, again, I definitely I totally understand it, but my fear going back to that student, thinking about that apple picker, thinking about readiness, we have our workforce that's here. We have our workforce that's upcoming potentially. What are the jobs right now that anyone could safely go in and say, I can have some type of career? Could I be an educator for 30 years and start as a teacher, let's say graduating at 22 with a bachelor's, 24, 25 with a master's, entering into the teaching field? Do I have a 30-year career?
The first idea, when you go back to your apple picker and really thinking about like what's going to happen to that person, I think it's fair to say that they will be displaced and hopefully they will be able to find something else. But there's no guarantee of that. And there's no guarantee that the skills that they've been developing or harnessing or the industry that they've been working in is going to find a place to receive them in. And so, again, when we don't acknowledge the problem, we can't address it. So we have to think about how we are going to be specific, not only in how we're teaching students and how we're all adopting AI, but also how we're holding government and legislation and policy accountable for this displacement that we can clearly see coming. But the second thing is, do I think that there are some industries that are going to be resistant? Yes, of course. I think that there are a lot of industries that will be resistant for a time. And I don't think that time is going to be very long. As we see advancements in robotics, we're also seeing that robots are now coming for those manual jobs that we were like, okay, well, you know what? If you're not going to be a coder, go be an electrician. It'll get you where you're trying to go. But it's not going to be full replacement in these areas. We are going to see displacement, but will we see full replacement? That's a lot harder to say. A lot of these AI tools are just being trained to be good enough to help you with your productivity. But even in helping an individual on a team with productivity means other members of that team are open to displacement. If I can do two people's jobs now in the same amount of time, one of y'all got to go. So there is that. But then the third part of that is the teaching. And a lot of us try to say like, oh, of course, teaching, nobody's coming for that one, right? The robots are not coming for that one. But we actually need them to. We are seeing boomers who are at the very tail end of their retirement cycle going out. We are seeing our Xers who are starting to be like, how many more years do I have before I make my term and let me get myself ready? And we don't have enough students in education programs right now to fill the slots of all the people who've walked out the door in the last 5 years and who will walk out the door in the next 5. So where are we going to get these people from for these education jobs that we need them in? Now we actually have a problem that is in search of a solution, which could be AI and partly robotics. And as those things are trained and get a little better, could there be displacement? Maybe, of people who don't feel the passion in the classroom like we want them to.
When I think about those workers that you talked about, I want to ask one more question related to education. And that is, do you see an opportunity here for actually bringing more people into education who may be displaced? And now, because of AI, they can reach our kids so we can have that human connection?
I have created the 7 C's of cognition, and I believe there's 7 critical skills that everyone, whether you're talking about someone who is trying to be resistant to displacement, or even if we're talking about kids getting ready to prepare them for the workforce, I think there's 7 critical skills that we all need to build. And surprise, surprise, none of them have anything to do with technology. And we're really talking about curiosity. Can we ask questions? Can we sit and wonder? And something amazing happened when Google came out and we had the answers at our fingertips. We stopped just wondering about things. I remember being a kid and we'd be sitting there just talking about a question. Nobody knew the answer. Nobody knew anyone who had the answer, but we had some hypotheses and we were going to debate the merit of those until the cows came home. That skill alone is something that we don't focus on enough in the classroom, is to be able to sit and think about a question or a topic and put ourselves out there with it. And so when we think about how we're going to close that, collaboration, communication, those are things that require people in order to practice. And those are the skills that we're going to see classrooms still really start to migrate towards, because we realize that they are building skills that are essential for us for overall success. And where else are we going to learn how to be people? Please say not in a virtual world. Like, I hope that's not it. So could we see some absorption inside of education? We could, but then I have to transition and ask you another question.
Okay.
How many teachers and paraeducators and administrators do you know in education who feel like they get paid what they deserve?
Not many, but
Not many, not
yeah.
many.
But when we think
And
about economics, is it no job? If it's faced with, I have to feed my family versus here's this opportunity, because if, like you said, if robots or AI in some form is going to take my job, there's going to be economic in terms of paychecks. There are going to be lower paychecks all around. And
that's
it
right. So
and
if we see this displacement and now we're saying, oh, education has been insulated, where are all the people going to go to find that job?
I'd say they would go to education. That was what I was thinking. Like, could there be a
Hmm.
place for these positions if there's a need where because
Yes,
for right now, we're continuing to have kids who are going to continue to need to have some sort of
that's right.
education.
All I'm saying is when we see an influx of employees, the employers don't have to work so hard to attract or retain them. And sometimes we see the paychecks get cut.
Right.
When we see the supply and demand of people start to shift, the marketplace demands say, hey, we don't have to work as hard for this. This really does come back to how are we going to hold policymakers accountable for all of this? Are we telling people that we are going to preserve the humanity amongst us and make sure that we protect people, or are we protecting profits?
There's always been an economic engine, but right now, this total disruption. Are we seeing this as AI companies were reducing cost, which will in turn lead to lower salaries? Are we trying to improve quality? Are we say, is there a space to say we really want to make you more efficient, what they say now, to make you better, to make you more productive? Or is it truly just we're saving money? This is eventually going to lead to you having lower pay.
I, I'm going to say it this way. When we saw AI companies take all of our knowledge, all of our printed word, all of our spoken word, all of it, anything that existed on the internet that we as individuals produced, that we created, and then read it all and repackage it, the knowledge that we created, to sell it back to us at a premium. That's kind of what's going on right now, right? I mean, we are paying a price for the AI that we use. Even if you're on a free tier of whatever, you are still paying economically the price of the development of these companies and this infrastructure. What we've really done is said, take this thing from me that you didn't pay me for, and now charge me to have it back. And that has actually caused a huge shift in valuation and market value for all of these companies. These companies are now worth billions of dollars based solely on the fact that they've taken our knowledge and are selling it back to us. And I think we are going to see a class divide as this goes further, of people who can afford to pay $200 a month for Claude and people who are on the free tier and the access that they get. But let's be clear, companies aren't philanthropists. If they can say, I can replace you and find something that costs a fraction of the price, that doesn't ever take a day off, that doesn't get any sick days, that I don't have to, the updates come, I don't have to retrain it, I don't have to reskill it. It's not as good as you, but it's cheaper than you. I think that it's clear that businesses will prefer that savings over that perfection, which means that is always going to win out over people in that sense. As we have this conversation, we just have to really remember that we've lived this cycle before where we've kind of done this repackaging. Offshoring was the exact same thing. Outsourcing was the exact same thing. Manufacturing automation. It's this same process where we say, you know what? We now have a way to do more with fewer people. And so we're going to take some of these people and they're just going to have to find someplace else to be. They're going to have to find some new jobs. And new jobs did emerge, but all of the people who were displaced didn't fit back into this new system. And all of those people who were displaced didn't get that paycheck the next time rent was due or the next time it was time to go get groceries. We got to be honest, right? How are we going to regulate the growth of these companies? What policy are we going to put in place to protect people? Because we are now at the point where our policy has not kept pace with the technology. There's going to be a moment where we realize we should have done something like way back. We should have paused, and we didn't.
One of the issues that I have is with policy and how long policy takes. And I think that if people had started thinking about the policy implications earlier, we would be a lot further along because policy started being introduced as something you could do in a day or something you could do in a week, or let's have a meeting and at the end of the meeting policy would appear.
I am not a policymaker, but I've been in this game for a long time. And what I can tell you is even the states that do have policy, some of those were outdated before they even got signed. The
Yeah.
technology is moving at such a clip that a state by state solution may not be enough to close the gaps that we're actually looking at. And when you think about it, in Texas classrooms, we still have teachers who cannot figure out how to manage cell phones. And that's technology we've had in the classroom for a decade. We've had smartphones for so long, like we should have had this figured out by now, is the thinking. So even if you had policy come together in action in the classrooms, have we really put something in place that's going to help all of us, not only the students, but the teachers and the employees within the company, within the organization, be successful? And for a lot of people, even those with policy, that answer is still no. We still don't know what to do with it. I support teachers all the time who are still putting student information into AI tools. Even if we had policy, can the policy keep pace with the development that's going on within the AI infrastructure, within generative AI? And does it have the forethought to be able to see what's coming down the pipeline? And honestly, I don't even know sometimes what's coming down the pipeline. I look at some of these AI predictions and I look at them and think, wait, it's not really what is going to happen, is it? So, our legislators who are not sitting in this world, I consume AI, I've been living in it for a really long time. People who are making policy decisions typically are not. So
Yeah.
how could they see what's coming down the pipeline if they don't even know exactly what they're looking at?
I would be very curious because you're in Ghana right now.
Mhm.
What are some kind of global perspectives around the policy that you know of, that you're aware of, given the worldview that you have?
Yeah, what is actually, I would say, interesting and problematic at the same time is that the internet has bias. It has an idea of what we are all supposed to be like. And if you're ever not sure of that, describe yourself in text and ask AI to create an image of you and see what fallacies and bias and all of those things show up. Or ask for this has happened to me all the time where I ask for an image and it puts the men in the powerful positions and the women as secretaries, or I'll ask for a story and give it some details. And all of a sudden we see people who are of color in certain positions with certain kind of names. And this is really reverberating for us on the continent where AI wasn't trained on our languages. It wasn't trained on our culture to the
Right.
extent as that it was of maybe more European style countries. And so we aren't seeing ourselves in the AI. The AI tools give generic responses based on someone living in the United States or in the UK or, in Germany. And we're asking about things that are very specific to continent and it doesn't know in the same kind of way. And so as policy is going forward here on the continent, there really is a push to say, listen, there's 1,000 languages that we would like to be training. We've got spoken languages that are going to be erased because they're not being captured in the same way. And that is definitely a mission for several countries, but they're behind the eight ball a little bit. The places and spaces that are developing these technology tools are not as invested in the idea of training a tool for the continent and having to train 1,000 languages and the rest. So I'm always a little apprehensive when we talk about these AI tools and their capacity because they come with bias. They come with a representation of what they think reality is that may or may not be what it actually is. So how do we make sure that culture and race and religion and all of the things that make us us don't get flattened into this here's what you are version?
And that's such a powerful point. The training data, who's training the data? Will it become where AI is training itself?
AI is already training itself. Yes, AI is training itself.
Yeah.
And and that's the thing now is that the bias is now baked in. The limitations in terms of being able to represent the global reach of people is already baked into the system that's now training itself. So, yeah, when you think about this, and even when it comes to job displacement, when you think about how this all resonates, are you suddenly being eliminated from the marketplace because your name on your resume says a certain thing and it's baked into the screening system? Are you being eliminated because the AI can now figure out how old you are and it thinks, you know what, this seems like somebody who might have graduated a while ago. I don't think we should try to bring them in for an interview. The bias is baked in. How do we make sure that we aren't being left out?
Well, going back to the premise of AI is taking your jobs and thinking about these applicant tracking systems. So many
Mhm.
systems across organizations, companies are relying on these applicant tracking systems. And as you mentioned, the AI is using whatever training data that it has to kind of sift through. And so NACA, I mean, I'm not beating the allegations, right? In terms of where NACA comes from.
Yeah, we've always known that names can have impact on top of resumes, but now that AI is making that assumptive progression so much faster than an individual person who might say, "Oh, I don't know if I like that name, but I can see they have some experience in XYZ. Let me pause." How how are these tools going to impact our hireability? And I know you paused for a second and you were talking about kind of like our older Gen Xers who might be a little more seasoned in the workplace. But we're actually seeing that those Xers and Ys are preserved in the workplace a little more, where we're really seeing losses right now are in entry-level positions because those entry-level positions are really built around people who don't have a lot of experience, who are coming in to learn. And those are the ones that are being eliminated in the beginning, right? 2,000 applicants might apply for one entry-level job. The applicant pool is looking for things that are going to make sure that this person's going to be a quality candidate, somebody who's getting their first job, somebody who doesn't have any experience in that industry, somebody who doesn't have a degree that aligns. They're automatically getting eliminated. You and I both know from experience that sometimes those people are actually the best employees in the company because they come with a different perspective. But those entry-level jobs going out the door is also a funnel issue when we think about who's going to take our jobs when we finally retire. Are we shooting ourselves in the foot?
Our jobs are not going to look the same way in 3 to 5 years. What we need to
They aren't.
know and how we need to know them. So when we think about those entry level jobs, are they disappearing or is it the task associated with those jobs that are changing? And is that the pivot that needs to take place? It goes back to those skills that you were talking about, the curiosity, the collaboration. Is that what employers are going to start looking for? That's my wondering. Kids who are putting their applications together right now and they don't want to get lost in the shuffle, how are we helping them in terms of that entry level? Have you seen anything related to supporting our entry level kind of recent grads?
I mean, honestly, what we're seeing is a massive displacement for our entry level possible employees. What we're really looking at right now is almost a canary in the coal mine when you think about it. I mean, the employment decline for workers aged 22 to 25 has decreased by 13% or more. What we're seeing is that that age group, these kids that just graduated, they statistically don't have the jobs. And part of that is because of the AI infrastructure. I used to need an assistant or an intern or someone to help me do the job that I do. But now, because I have AI, I can close the gap at 80%. And so I don't really need an intern or an assistant. I don't need that entry level job anymore because now I have an AI that can do it for me. Those workers are getting displaced. Even for older workers, we're seeing that kind of displacement in terms of some categories of jobs. But I don't think the impact hasn't even been felt as much as it's going to be yet. That's my humble opinion. I think we still have the worst is yet to come in that 3 to 5 year timeline. So now we're thinking about kids who are seniors right now, who are going to go to college and come out on the other side in 5 years. I have no idea what they're coming out to. And I wish I had a rock solid idea of what we should be teaching them inside the classrooms. A lot of people default to the technology with the idea that if you can learn the technology, then you're not going to get passed up. But I honestly don't know that that's it. I think we are really talking about developing the thinking skills of the next generation of workforce so that they have this universal adaptability that they can bring to any position. Because the tools are changing so fast, we need to build skills internally that allow us to communicate effectively, to create things that engage others and understand ideation. Those are things the AI can do when it has a core starting point. That is where we come back into the loop, where we bring our experience and we bring our perspective, and those elements come in so that we can create and engage. These people who got a degree in philosophy, which feels like there's no job for you, a degree in philosophy or art major, where are you really working? But because those people have a very deep vocabulary, they have a perspective that has staying power. They sit down with an AI tool and they can create things a little bit differently than someone who's only ever been tooled into one skill, one idea, one industry. I think jack of all trades is where we actually need to move to a little bit with our education systems, because the more context we individually have, the more we bring to the systems, the more vocabulary that we have, the better we're able to command these tools. So it's going to be, I think, very interesting to see how this moves forward.
I think about my public school education. I am a person of a certain age, but when I was in school, we did learn about different things. We had home ec classes,
Mhm.
we had shop classes. I
Shop
learned how to
class,
we learned how to build things.
learn
Uh,
how to sew, we learn how to
yep.
build. Yep, all those things. Mhm.
I was recently listening to a talk where somebody mentioned the idea of job stability and what that meant. But now, a lot of people that I know have had 3 to 4 careers. That adaptability that we were taught, I think, was lost once we went to a testing culture, because then it did become the one thing.
A
How do we
test.
get back to the adaptability?
When we talk about teaching to the test, we're talking about retention of information above application of information. But what you're saying is absolutely right. Having shop class, going to tech class, having a computer class, going in and doing car and auto mechanics, some astronomical amount of 20 somethings don't know how to cook an egg. An egg. And I can't remember what the number is. I feel like it's in the 30 percentile, where it's like a third of 20 somethings can't cook an egg. Huh? 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 But I want to also capture this other idea. When we have this conversation about our boomers who really were, I got a job and I stayed in it from the time I was 18 until I retired. And then we move into us Xers who have had maybe two, three, four, five kind of jobs or career cycles. And then we move to our millennials and we go on down. We see that they really are not tied to any kind of job. Like if somebody got a I want to move today feeling, they feel empowered to go live their best life and find a different type of job. But on the tail end of this, we're seeing a gig economy above everything else. And people aren't getting a job at all. They're running 3 or 4 gigs in a side hustle, and that's how they're putting together their income. And so, from one end to the other is a fundamental shift in how we actually look at what the workforce and marketplace looks like as an employee. But to flip it to the corporate side, if I can get you to be a gig worker, I don't got to pay you no health care. I don't have to give you time off. You don't get any of the protections that come with being a full-time employee, and I can fire you pretty much anytime I want to. How have we made this shift? Like, what are we saying about labor and labor protection as we move from I work for 40 years, I have a pension, I have protections, I have loyalty to I don't know if I'm gonna have enough hours next week to make the bills. And on top of that, if I don't show up to work one day, I have nothing. Now we're going to throw AI on top of that and say, you know what? AI allows us to take some more employees who are in this protected zone and move them away towards a little more of a gig economy. When we see AI take impact, it isn't always just a full-on replacement. It's this type of thing where it's like, okay, I don't need as many people, and the people that I do hire, I'm not going to pay them as much, and I don't have to give them any protections. What are we doing for ourselves, the people that are supposed to be part of the system? Help?
Well, one powerful word you used was yet. And a part of my wondering is with that situation, how many people are being rehired or retained just to train the models or to train whichever type of AI in order to do better so that it eventually will have that total replacement. Eventually, it'll be better than the humans. If we don't face it, we have to deal with it. That's not an option not to face it. At the same time, do we create a sense of fear or almost paralysis where particularly our younger generation feels like what's the point, it's out here, I'm just going to go lay in bed at my parents' house and cover my head and I'm good.
I wish I could go lay in bed at my parents' house. We can do things to help ourselves prepare, but the danger is actually not having the conversation at all. When we get blindsided by these things and we don't have any mechanism in place or any kind of preparation in place, it's very difficult to come back from that. It's very difficult to overcome that. I think the worst thing we can do is just kind of sit here and pretend like, oh, don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine. Just do what you got to do. I understand that alarm can create panic and paralysis, but at the same time, we do need to move here. There is some urgency in what's going on, and we can't sit back and just watch. We can't.
So what does meaningful preparation look like? Does it start in the home? Does it start at school based on these conversations?
Yes, and yes. I think there's a couple of things to consider. If you are a parent at home, I really want you to think about how you allow your children to question. And I've got a whole brood at my house. I got a 25-year-old, a 23-year-old, a 17-year-old, and an 11-year-old. And my kids will actually moan at me when I tell them that we're going to do a question storm. And they're like, Mom. But here's the thing is that sitting and looking at something and just questioning about it connects us as people, but also it just allows you to have that curiosity. And having that, being able to question about things, positions you to use these AI tools more effectively, but also makes you a better entrepreneur, makes you a better business person, makes you a better employee. It makes you ready no matter what's coming down the pipeline. And again, when I come back to these 7 C's of cognition, we're really thinking about how does curiosity factor in? How does creativity factor in? Can I bring my personal experience into the conversation, into the skill set that I'm providing? Am I a critical thinker? Am I using common sense, collaboration, communication, and sequential thought? As a parent, having my kid question and actually being comfortable with the fact that I don't need to have the answer. I don't need to have the answer to all these questions. You remember back when we were kids, it was like you asked your parents a question. If they didn't know the answer, they sent you to the encyclopedia. They're like, girl, I don't know. That's why I bought those encyclopedias. Go ask there. We need to be comfortable with the idea that as a parent, I don't have the answers, but you know what? Let's ask the questions and then pick which question is the best one to go and ask and answer with an AI tool or a voice activated device or just a Google search. We can build those skills inside of the home. Back in the classroom, we have got to break away from teaching to the test, and inquiry is where we need to sit. Can I have an inquiry-led learning experience for my students in the classroom where they start by being provoked and inquire, analyze, create, and engage others? That is the pathway to make sure that a student who is learning an idea has the capacity to take an idea and create something that engages others, which is what we are asking for in the workplace from our employees. Can you take information and create an ad that's going to engage others? Can you take this information and create a presentation that's going to engage the team? Can you take this information and create a new product that's going to engage our target market? Why are we not doing that same mimicking in the classroom?
So going back to that, AI is going to take your job. When you look at it from that testing lens, it gives a view of what can take place and how it can take place over time. And with that, another wondering that I'm having is that ultimately responsibility has to lie somewhere. And if AI is going to take our jobs, who is responsible? Who is
Who is
responsible for
responsible?
preparing our workers? Is it
Yes,
is the education field? Is it employers? Is it policymakers?
all good questions, which is why we have to have this conversation. We can't stop and go, okay, listen, we have to do something in the institution of education, not only in K-12, but higher ed is not going to be able to prepare these students in the same manner. What are we doing at higher ed? And how are we reskilling the workforce for people who do get displaced? And if people do get displaced and they cannot find a job, what social safety nets are we putting into place, knowing that this displacement, this thing that's about to happen, is happening at the same time that we're seeing the biggest transfer of wealth from the middle class to the upper class. And people are struggling to pay the bills and buy food. So before we've even had the displacement, we're ripping out the social safety net and then now going to move into a space where we're like, okay, well, so like 100,000 of y'all just lost your jobs. Nah, if we don't have the conversations, we can't say like we have to put these things in place because we can see what's coming.
Has been one of the deepest conversations that I've had in a long time. My eyes have been open to the fact that AI is going to really have an impact on how we look at the workforce a lot faster than we think. This should extend beyond the kind of conversation that we've had. And I hope that more people will have this conversation in ways that are truthful, but not alarming to the extent that it has to cause stress. There's no way around it. And I think if people fold into that and understand, like, this is going to take time, this is going to be uncomfortable. If we start there with the truth of it, maybe that will take us a lot further.
I certainly hope so. I want to make sure that this conversation is happening because we don't want people to say, oh, you either are on the side that humans are going to become useless or on the side that this is never coming. And there's this really wide open gray area that we are moving back and forth within as we have this conversation and make this progression. If we don't stop and have acknowledgement of how things are going, we can't prepare for it the right way. Even when you gave the summary right, where it was like AI might be coming for your jobs, even the ones that we think are protected. Just remember, as an individual plumber, I might not hire an accountant because now I found out that AI is infused in my accounting software, and so I don't need an accountant. It's not always an elimination of a job. It's the edging out of the workforce, kind of like an onion, and you're just kind of layering at a time where people get displaced, slowly the next wave and the next wave. And we've seen a couple of waves come through already. We have to do something now before ain't no onion left.
Truth, truth. Well, this Ayo has been amazing. And I appreciate you so much for taking the time. Your perspective has been amazing. I would not want to debate you
I was on
in
the
a
high
real
school
debate.
debate team, so you know.
I can tell. This has been awesome. I ask all of the guests on the Detour Degree a couple of questions, and I hope you will indulge me
I'm
here.
ready.
And so, what is one unexpected experience that taught you more than school ever could?
Ooh. Okay, people in the audience are going to think I'm crazy. I lost everything I owned in Hurricane Harvey, and it was the absolute best thing that ever happened to me.
Mm,
And so that statement usually has people go, hey, wait, what? So without telling you the whole story, I just want everyone to acknowledge that sometimes in the struggle, that's where we find ourselves and our desires and the life that we really want to live. So we're riding this AI flood right now. It could be kind of some overlap here. We've just got to figure out how we can turn the things that this flood is taking away into the things that this flood is making possible.
wow, wow, That's powerful. The second question I have for you is who or what gave you permission to take a different route?
I'm going to go with my parents.
Okay.
My mom really was a person who taught me that it's okay to be a woman and want the things that I want, that my gender is not a limitation to me. And my dad really empowered me by helping me to understand that in my Black skin, I can still be whoever it is that I would like to be. And so my parents combined have taught me that I should not look at the world as giving me limitations based on gender or race, that I'm allowed to be myself in all of the places and spaces I go into. And let me tell you, having that permission embedded in my personality has allowed me to really come into my own.
Yes, family is very powerful. My third question for you, Io, is if you could go back and give your younger self one detour to take, what would it be?
If I could go back and give my younger version a detour to take, I would tell her to take all of them. Let me explain that one a little bit. I think, and I know, and I'm not even going to say I think, I just spoke at a university 2 days ago. And we all have this idea in our teens and our 20s that there's just this one path to get from where you are to where you're supposed to be. And I think there is no more harmful thing than to have that idea in your head. Y'all, listen, it's a mountain, okay? You're going to start at the bottom wherever you are, and you are going to reach the top, but there's 1,000 different ways to get there. And the detours, they seem like distractions, but those are the things that teach you the things you need to get forward and take motion. The detours, that's where you build the grit and the experience and the skills that you need to make it in this world. So y'all take every detour. If I could go back, I'd be like, stop thinking about your 10-year plan. Take some more detours.
No roads less traveled for you.
I say all the roads, travel all them less traveled roads. Take at least a couple. Okay, if you can't take them all, at least take one. One detour.
Yes, yes. We left a lot on the table. Is there anything else you would like to leave our audience with today?
I will say that this is a moment where we are really feeling that there's something coming. I think all of us collectively are kind of holding a little bit of a breath. And that's not necessarily just with AI. I think there's a lot of things going on that have us feeling a little tension. And in that tension, I just want us to think about what those detours do. Yes, things might not work out exactly as we intend, but we still have to make progress, not only as individuals, but as society. As long as we come together and acknowledge that we are important in this system and people are important in this system, I think we can make those better choices. So hold those two things to be true. You are important, people are important. Let's make sure they are always prioritized.
Thank you to the amazing Ayo Jones. You have been an amazing guest, and I will always appreciate the time that you have given us today on the Detour Degree.
Yay, thank you, it was a pleasure.
Every generation encounters a doorway that changes the world of work. The challenge is not deciding whether to walk through it, but understanding what waits on the other side. Thanks to Ayo Jones for helping us explore how AI is reshaping careers, skills, and opportunity. And thank you for joining us on this detour. Until next time, keep learning, keep adapting, and remember that students deserve a future of work they are ready to enter with confidence.